The story takes place in the near future, where games have become highly evolved and now players can fully immerse themselves into the game world. An MMO game called Union is extremely popular all around the world, and it is basically a virtual reality. We follow our main protagonists, who are elementary school students that have a group called Subaru. They are famous as they're known for having some of the best players in the Union virtual reality. Haruto Amo is the leader of the 6-member group. One day, the Subaru group enters the MMO to do a regular mission exploring a dungeon. While everything seems normal at first, they're eventually attacked by a very strong dungeon boss. They try to fight it, but eventually they get overpowered. The dungeon boss then attacks Haruto directly, so Asahi Kuga, who is our other main protagonist, jumps in to defend him, and in turn her avatar in the game is killed protecting Haruto. Later, the friends return back to the normal world and everything seems fine. However, after a few days, a shocking event occurs. Asahi dies from heart failure in the real world. When the news breaks, the game Union is shut down. There are mixed reports, but there are some who think that because her avatar was injured in the game, her real body suffered as well. The entire game is then cancelled and the friend group falls apart. A lot of them blame Haruto for what happened to Asahi as she died defending him. 6 years pass, and the sequel to Union is being released. The company has announced that the game is now totally safe. They even rebranded it into Reunion. As a way to make the launch of the game even bigger, players are given special invitations so that they can participate. We then discover that Haruto now lives a pretty pathetic life. He has not gotten over what happened all those years ago and is still in great pain. However, one day during his mundane existence, he gets an invitation to play the new Reunion MMO. As he has nothing going on in his life, Haruto ends up accepting the invitation and logs on. As he is playing, he explores the game world and goes on a dungeon mission. While in the dungeon, he finds a treasure chest, and when he opens it, he is astounded to find Asahi inside sleeping. Haruto is shocked to see his old friend is still alive, but he has so many questions. She seems to have not aged one bit, as her avatar looks the same from all those years ago. Haruto talks to Asahi, and through their conversation, he realizes that she still thinks that they're 6 years in the past and that they're still doing that failed quest. Haruto tries to find a way to get her out of the game, but it is revealed that she is stuck there and cannot log out of the game at all. Their conversation is interrupted as an enemy guild steps into the dungeon. This guild was their enemy in the original game, and now they have returned to finish the job. The players instantly attack Haruto, so Asahi activates a power called Sense, which is a power that players had in the previous version of the game. Haruto doesn't have this power as he came from the new version, but Asahi can give him hers. This power allows the player to easily predict the opponent's moves and attacks, which gives Haruto a huge advantage. But before he can finish off the enemy, Takanori Mikado arrives at the scene, who is a former member of the Subaru guild, but now he has a totally new guild called Illuminati. With his new guild, he defeats the enemy with ease. Later, after logging out of the game, a girl who has a secret crush on Haruto, called Satsuki, goes to visit him. She tells Haruto that he needs to face his past mistakes and that running away is not the answer. Satsuki and Haruto then agree to meet up in the game. After the login, they find each other and go on a journey together. Some time passes and Haruto arrives in a cave where he meets a girl called Alicia, who turns out to have information about Asahi and how she is still part of the game. Alicia also warns Haruto that he is a target of numerous people. Satsuki sees Asahi and Haruto talking and connecting, making her extremely jealous, and in turn she deviously takes Asahi aside to explain some things to her. She tells her that Haruto has changed a lot in the past 6 years and he is not a good person. Asahi is shocked by this, and when Haruto hears what Satsuki said about him, they get into a heated argument. The argument upsets Haruto so much that he decides to log out of the game to take a break. Satsuki doesn't know how to express her feelings to him, so she just ends up being mean to him sometimes. After some time, Satsuki visits Haruto and reminds him of their past. Haruto remembers that 6 years ago all members of the Subaru guild exchanged special rings and promised to always be there for each other. This motivates Haruto and he returns to the game. He meets up with Asahi once more, and their plan is to gather valuable materials that can be used to build a special ring that Haruto gave Asahi in the past. Satsuki also gathered materials and made a ring for herself, joining them on their quest. The three friends go into a dangerous dungeon, and after exploring it they come to the place where they had their final quest that resulted in Asahi dying. They once again encounter the dungeon boss, a mighty dragon. This time the dragon is summoned by Alicia. The three friends try to fight off the dragon, but they start to lose. But at that moment, Haruto remembers the promise he made to Asahi. They promise to always be there for each other and most importantly to protect each other. In that moment, Haruto awakens his sense power and manages to defeat the dungeon boss with ease. The three friends find their way out of the dungeon cave, and just then a mysterious artifact falls out from Asahi's outfit. Haruto touches the object and has strange visions that show him some answers about what is happening in this game. Through the world of Reunion spreads rumors that Haruto and his friends defeated one of the strongest bosses in the game. This also gets the attention of various enemy guilds, one of them being the Southern Cross Guild, who eventually go on to attack Haruto and his party. After a while, the Brill Society Grill and their leader, called Angelus, asks Haruto to join their guild. However, he refuses as he remains loyal to his friends and his guild. Haruto along with Satsuki and Asahi then go on another quest. This time their journey takes them to the Tower of Heaven, which is a special dungeon that they had trouble with in the past, as they were just too low level and it was always too difficult. During their journey through the tower they are faced by a dungeon boss which attacks the group and immobilizes Satsuki, who feels that Haruto is not a good enough leader and for a moment loses her trust in him. After some time they defeat the dungeon boss but are faced by Takanori and his guild members. Takanori warns Haruto to stay out of his way and to leave Asahi alone. Haruto refuses to just abandon his friend and he gets ready to face Takanori in battle. But just before the battle begins, Satsuki comes between them and stops it from happening. Takanori then tells Haruto that things will never return back to normal and that he will never join Subaru again. So now their friendship seems beyond repair. After this happens, Haruto continues investigating Asahi and he finds several clues connected to Clive Vivali, a young man who is the only foreign member of Subaru, and Nozomi Kusaka, a shy and introverted girl of Subaru who has feelings for Takanori. Haruto tries but cannot find any traces of them inside the MMO world. Elsewhere, Takanori has decided to combine his Illuminati guild with Southern Cross and Brill Society. All these players form a new super guild called Divine, and Takanori thinks that now they will be unstoppable. Haruto and his party get separated while they are faced with a thick fog. In the fog, the members of Divine manage to kidnap Asahi. It seems that Takanori trusted the wrong players as members of his new guild betrayed him. Haruto gets into a combat situation but manages to escape when he is helped by Alicia. Satsuki fights against the fog and Divine members and escapes on her own. Haruto then decides to go rescue Asahi on his own. He makes his way to the place where Asahi has been taken hostage. Haruto gets himself ready, knowing that he will face a large number of Divine members. Satsuki suddenly has a flood of memories from her past. She remembers that for a long time she thought of herself as weak and fragile, but it was Asahi who comforted her. She remembers how much Asahi meant to her as a friend. In the present, Satsuki goes to Takanori and asks him to help Haruto rescue Asahi as it is the least they can do to protect their friend. Haruto reaches his goal and starts a battle with Divine members. He fights several of them at once and does pretty well at the beginning. But soon more members join in the battle and Haruto is overpowered by the enemy. However, just before he loses, Satsuki and Takanori arrive to help. They manage to hold off the Divine fighters and they face off against Angelus, who is holding Asahi captive. Haruto and Takanori become cornered in battle, but Satsuki finally manages to awaken her sense and with it she defeats the guild members. So now, it's only Angelus and the Southern Cross leader against Haruto and his friends. Angelus then turns into a giant monster but Haruto and his friends manage to defeat him and finally free Asahi. They all escape the situation and return to safety. Using a special object called the Prophet Art, the group learns that Asahi is some sort of failed experiment, and we come to discover that it seems the gaming company had something to do with her creation. Elsewhere, Clive and Alicia watch them from a distance planning something troublesome for the group. It seems that their goal is for members of the Subaru Guild to awaken their senses powers. Asahi, Satsuki, and Haruto all go to the ocean and board a pirate ship that is led by Alwita the captainy. The ship has received intel that nearby there is a legendary sword deep underwater. Haruto finally manages to locate the sword and eventually realizes that the sword was the same one he had in the previous Union game. He dives in, but sees that the sword is being guarded by a sea dragon called Aegir. Haruto tries to fight the sea dragon but he struggles as he's finding it difficult to fight underwater. Then suddenly Clive shows up and helps the crew retreat to safety. The players then return to the real world, where Takanori meets with Haruto and Satsuki. Takanori decides to share some vital information with his former friends. He tells him that he found out information regarding a mysterious company called Gnosis that is planning something sinister using the MMO game. He also believes that this strange company somehow faked Asahi's death. This information surprises Haruto, but shortly after, he realizes that something more is going on behind this entire relaunch of the MMO game. They also find out that their former friend Nozomi is returning to town after a long time. Haruto logs back into the game and with his party he tries to find the sword once more. They go underwater but with the help of Clive they manage to move easier while swimming. The group finally defeats Aegir and Haruto tries to retrieve his old sword, but the moment he touches it, Clive reveals his true intentions and betrays the group, stabbing Haruto without mercy. Haruto loses himself and everything goes black. But finally he wakes up in an alternative reality that was created by Asahi's Prophet Art. There, he wakes up after 6 years as it seems that in this reality his character died instead of Asahi. In this world, Haruto was in a coma for 6 years. Alicia then arrives and informs Haruto that senses can be used in the real world. The Union game was created by Gnosis to train and test senses powers so that they will finally achieve an ultimate sense power. However, it is revealed that the game is actually just a test. Haruto finds Asahi and tells her that this is not his reality and he needs to get back to his world to help his friends. Asahi understands and she sends him back to his reality, but this time she sends him just moments before Clive stabs him. Haruto now has time to react and he blocks the attack from Clive. Haruto realizes that his friend Clive would remain loyal, so this must be a fake creation that is acting like Clive. His friends help Haruto retrieve the sword and they defeat Eager once and for all. They then find out that Alicia tried to contain her sense power in a red stone, but it couldn't contain the power, so it ended up shattering into many pieces. Haruto realizes that the fragment they have must be part of that stone. He tells the rest of his group what he learned from Alicia and explains everything he knows about Gnosis and Union. The rest of the Subaru members now realize that they must stop the company. Clive informs them that they need to find Nozomi and make her awaken her sense. Later in the day, the group learns that Nozomi has become a model and she doesn't play video games anymore. And ever since Asahi died, Nozomi hasn't been able to play any sort of game as the event scared her too much. Later, Satsuki finds her courage and she decides to talk to Haruto. She tells him that she has feelings for him and he needs to make a decision about their relationship at the dance coming up. The following night, a ball dance takes place inside the game. Haruto and Takanori go to Asahi's grave where they have a fight. They argue about who needs to protect Asahi, and Takanori finally forgives Haruto so can they repair their friendship. And he eventually allows Haruto to dance with Asahi at the ball. Takanori dances with Satsuki, who has seemingly been rejected by Haruto. Satsuki is heartbroken but she tries not to show it. Meanwhile, Nozomi is also invited to play Reunion. For a moment she fights with herself about logging on, but then remembers how Takanori helped her when they were in elementary school, and it was because of this Nozomi fell in love with him. Remembering those fond memories, Nozomi logs into the game. She arrives at the ball where she sees Takanori dancing with Satsuki, which makes her break down. Suddenly, two strange-looking agents of Gnosis approach her and invite her to work for their organization. Haruto, Takanori, and Satsuki go to investigate Nozomi's home. For several days now she has been missing. They realize that right before she disappeared, Nozomi logged into the game and played it for a while. They also get information from Clive, who can trace her activity, so they may be able to find her location inside the game world. They all then log into the game and go to that specific location, but are attacked by some strange creatures. They manage to defeat them and then Nozomi suddenly appears. She is different. It seems that she has been brainwashed. By her side are two Gnosis agents, the same ones that kidnapped her. Their names are Martian and Cerinthus. Haruto and his party attack the Gnosis agents, but they cannot land any of their attacks as the Gnosis agents are just too powerful. Nozomi then creates a curse and puts it on Asahi, which forces Haruto and his party to retreat. Haruto, Takanori, and Satsuki go back to the real world and they try to come up with a plan. In the real world, Takanori finally figures out that Nozomi has feelings for him. He realizes that when she saw him dancing with Satsuki, it pushed her over the edge. However, before they can come up with a plan, all three of them start to feel dizzy. It seems that their senses have started to shift their perception in real life. A Gnosis member appears and thanks the members of the Subaru Guild for becoming friends again. Then the mysterious person disappears. Haruto decides to log back into Reunion to finally put a stop to this. In the meantime, Asahi wakes up from a horrible nightmare. She is actually sleeping at the base as Haruto returns to the game. The base is then destroyed and the party needs to evacuate. Haruto and his party go into a dungeon which appeared just recently in the game, and they notice that Asahi's sense is acting strange. The party is then faced with Nozomi, Cerinthus, and Martian. Takanori decides to bring back Nozomi. He apologizes for never acknowledging her feelings. Nozomi then attacks him, but Takanori doesn't dodge any of her strikes, but finally manages to hug Nozomi, which returns her back to normal. Haruto is then suddenly shot by Asahi. It seems that her sense has changed her behavior and made her angry at Haruto. Haruto is on the ground trying to recover from being shot. It is revealed that inside Asahi lives a goddess that is part of the Gnosis plan. This being is supposed to create paradise for humanity. While all this is happening, Cerinthus attacks Clive, but Alicia manages to save him. Haruto once again remembers his promise to Asahi, and this gives him strength to regain his sense. Haruto then defeats Martian and Cerinthus and the battle is finally over. Nozomi creates a new sheath for Haruto's sword. The victorious Subaru party logs out of the game. Shortly after, Takanori goes to meet Nozomi and admits that he has feelings for her. As some time passes, the group begins going on more quests as they have reformed their guild. The actions of the Gnosis company have become public, and it is then revealed that Alicia is also a member of Subaru, and this brings the anime to an end.